Welcome to the debate. Imagine you are about to undergo major abdominal surgery.
Right. A terrifying prospect for anyone.
Absolutely. And the surgeon offers you a choice. Go to sleep under general anesthesia and risk never waking up, or stay entirely awake.
Which sounds almost barbaric on its face.
Yeah, I mean, in the second option, you feel the scalpel, you talk through the pain, you follow the surgeon's commands.
And then a small piece of technology on your neck artificially wipes your memory of the entire trauma.
Exactly. Today, we're looking at a patient who had to make exactly that choice.
It is a scenario that completely dismantles our traditional understanding of medical care. Usually, there's a clean break in your timeline. You close your eyes in one room, you open them in another.
And the repair is done.
Right. It's done. But with this technology, the lights don't go out. The sleep is stripped away, and we are left staring at a medical landscape that, well, it forces us to question what it actually means to survive an operation.
We're examining a remarkable document today. It's a real-time, pre-operative account written by a 48-year-old patient named Andrew Kessler.
Sitting in Bay 4 of St. Mary's, Paddington at 6:14 in the morning.
Right, waiting to be wheeled in for a highly complex, potentially life-threatening pancreatic surgery.
And he is scribbling this account on the back of blank hip replacement leaflets because he's deeply disturbed by a form he signed just an hour earlier.
The surgical compliance protocol, that's the core of our discussion today. He agreed to this at 5 a.m. The protocol utilizes a modified hypnotic touch disc on the cervical spine,
keeping him completely awake.
Yes, awake, he can swallow, follow instructions, even report pain levels. But the disc chemically and electrically intercepts the brain's memory centers, completely suppressing the consolidation of episodic memory.
So he endures the physical trauma consciously, but remembers absolutely zero of it afterward.
Exactly. And I argue that this protocol is a justifiable, medically superior advancement that pragmatically prioritizes bodily survival and recovery over, well, philosophical discomfort.
And I argue that the protocol's bundling of physical safety with mandatory amnesia is ethically corrosive, exploiting a patient's fear of death to bypass informed consent regarding the profound erasure of their own personal biography.
Let me lay out why I see this protocol as not just a medical triumph, but an absolute necessity for patients like Kessler. We really have to ground this in the empirical, biological reality of his situation.
Okay, lay it out.
He is 48 years old. He's the sole earner for his family after his wife recently took a corporate buyout. He has 2 daughters,
one of whom is weeks away from taking high-pressure university entrance exams.
Right, so the stakes are just incredibly high for his family, and he's facing an exploratory and corrective procedure in his retroperitoneal anatomy.
Which is a nightmare to navigate.
It is. For those unfamiliar, the surgeons are digging deep behind the abdominal cavity. They're navigating a minefield of major blood vessels and vital organs to get to his pancreas. As Kessler himself notes, there's a non-trivial chance he will not survive this.
The stakes are absolute. I agree.
So his primary calculus, and I think the entirely correct calculus, is which option leaves me more likely to walk back into my own kitchen on Friday afternoon?
Sure.
The surgical compliance protocol objectively serves this goal. We need to understand why general anesthesia is so dangerous here. It doesn't just put your mind to sleep, it suppresses your entire autonomic nervous system.
Your blood pressure drops, your respiratory drive shuts down.
Exactly. The surgical team is essentially working blind to the patient's real-time physiological state. If a nerve is compressed, the unconscious body cannot warn them.
And the protocol replaces that blindness with active biofeedback.
It does. Kessler can take deep breaths on command to shift his internal organs. He can report exactly where a sensation is radiating. That is a staggering medical advantage. It offers demonstrably lower mortality margins, faster recovery times, and completely eliminates the post-operative delirium that plagues older patients.
I hear the mathematics of survival, and, I don't dispute the surgical advantages of a responsive patient.
Good, because they're indisputable.
But the framework of this intervention is profoundly coercive. Let us look closely at the reality of what happened in Bay 4. Kessler refers to a moral murkiness for a very good reason.
Because he was scared.
because what we have is a profound philosophical intervention disguised as a simple administrative choice. The deliberate artificial deletion of hours of conscious human life framed like a choice about anesthesia?
I think that's a bit of an overstatement.
Consider the context. It is 5 a.m. A 28-year-old anesthetic liaison hands a glowing tablet to a terrified, exhausted man facing his own mortality. He offers him a statistically safer surgery, but only on the condition that he agrees to have his memory wiped.
Well, they are late.
That is not a free choice. Furthermore, we must confront what this technology actually does biologically. It does not numb the body. It does not spare the patient from agony.
It modulates the pain, though.
But it creates a temporary suffering version of the self. Kessler realizes that for several hours, a localized version of his consciousness will exist with his abdomen unzipped, feeling modulated but very real pain, answering questions about that pain.
Which allows the surgeon to save him.
And then that conscious experience is conceptually annihilated. The memories are prevented from forming. The hospital is treating conscious human experience as a disposable byproduct of a medical procedure.
Okay, I have to admit, when I first read Kessler's account of a, temporary suffering self on the table, it gave me a chill. It is a terrifying thought.
Because it is terrifying.
But if we pull back from the emotion for a second, let's focus precisely on that 5 a.m. moment. I think the accusation of institutional coercion fundamentally misreads Kessler's own autonomy.
How so?
He was backed into a corner.
Was he?
Kessler was extraordinarily informed. We are not talking about a medically illiterate patient who was railroaded by a fast-talking doctor. Kessler read the leaflets, he read the scan reports.
He did his homework, yes.
He explicitly states that he researched his pancreatic anatomy to the point of knowing more than any reasonable person should. And crucially, he acknowledges that the liaison did not lie to him.
Well, they didn't have to lie.
They didn't pressure him, didn't even suggest whether he should sign or not. The consent form was perfectly legible. The leaflet left on his table was unambiguous. He states clearly, "I have not been deceived."
Intellectual comprehension does not equal uncoerced consent.
But if we respect patient autonomy, we must respect that Kessler made a calculated, informed decision. He was under duress, yes, but it was a duress of his biology, not the duress of the hospital.
I come at it from a different way. Yes, Kessler understood the mechanics of the disc. He understood the anatomy of his pancreas. But offering a mathematically safer procedure to a terrified man at 5 in the morning is not a neutral act.
It's a medical act.
It is like a predatory mortgage lender cornering you with a contract while your house is actively on fire. Of course you're going to sign it. You'll sign anything to put the fire out.
Comparing a life-saving doctor to a predatory lender is a bit much.
But the structure of the choice exploits your vulnerability. Kessler himself issues a desperate warning in this text. He explicitly asks that future patients be offered this choice in daylight with a representative of his own choosing in the room.
Which is completely impractical.
Impractical or not, it's a glaring indictment of the consent process. The hospital timed this brilliantly. They presented a complex philosophical dilemma when his physical and emotional resistance was at its absolute lowest.
They didn't time it maliciously.
They leveraged his love for his daughters and his fear of death to secure a signature on a tablet. 90 seconds of a young doctor waiting in silence in the pre-dawn hours is an eternity of pressure. It is institutional coercion wrapped in a friendly, well-trained voice.
But the hospital didn't invent his pancreatic tumor. The pressure he is under is biological.
They capitalize on it, though.
The liaison's timing at 5 a.m. is simply the reality of surgical wards. Surgeries happen early. Pre-op rounds happen earlier. To say he was coerced implies the hospital manufactured the threat to force his hand.
I'm not saying they manufactured the tumor.
They offered him a tool to mitigate a threat that was already killing him, and Kessler chose the tool that gave him the highest probability of seeing his daughter's exam results.
While holding his memory hostage.
To demand a daylight philosophical seminar with an independent representative completely ignores the crushing logistical realities of a functioning hospital. Kessler himself noted that wait times for this elective surgery dropped from 14 weeks to 4, precisely because of the efficiencies of this protocol.
And that efficiency reveals exactly what is wrong here.
How is shorter wait times for cancer surgery wrong?
Because why are they taking his physical safety and holding it hostage to his memory?
Kessler argues that physical safety and biographical continuity are two completely separate things, and they shouldn't be bundled into a single signature box.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. The bundle is the product.
You think they can't be separated?
I completely challenge the premise that they can be separated. The superior mortality figures exist because the patient is awake.
Right, I'm not arguing against being awake.
But let's look at the biology of why the amnesia is required. A laparotomy means opening the human abdomen entirely. Imagine asking a human being to lie on a table for 6 hours, feeling the manipulation of their internal organs, and fully forming long-term memories of absolute, unmitigated trauma.
They wouldn't be unmitigated. The pain is modulated.
Even modulated, if the brain were recording that data, the central nervous system would flood with cortisol. The psychological shock would induce profound PTSD, if not acute physiological collapse on the table.
People endure awake surgeries today.
Not major abdominal resections of this scale. The biofeedback the surgeon needs, calm, modulated reporting of sensation, would be neurologically impossible if the patient was forming permanent memories of the agony. The amnesia is not an arbitrary add-on for the hospital's convenience.
Is it, though?
Yes, it is the functional, physiological prerequisite that makes the awake state survivable in the first place. They are inextricably linked.
Are they really inextricably linked, or is it just easier for the hospital to manage? As you said, Kessler notes that the pain is modulated during the procedure. It is managed, dulled pain.
It's still trauma.
We have patients right now who endure awake brain surgery, awake spinal procedures, to provide exactly this kind of feedback. Yes, it is incredibly difficult, but they retain their continuity of self. They remember it.
And many of them have severe trauma from it.
What the surgical compliance protocol does is take the ultimate ethical shortcut. It assumes that because an experience is highly traumatic, the hospital has the right to preemptively mandate its deletion.
To protect the patient.
But you say the patient couldn't endure the trauma. The patient is enduring it. That is the great deception of the protocol. Kessler will endure it.
His body will.
His conscious mind in that room will endure every single second of that surgery. The hospital isn't preventing the suffering. They're just preventing the memory of the suffering.
Which prevents the long-term trauma.
And the reason they mandate the memory wipe is to protect themselves from the liability of a traumatized patient population. A patient who won't remember the agony is a much more compliant piece of biomachinery for the surgeon to operate on.
Oh, come on. Calling a patient biomachinery is a highly cynical way to describe a medical team trying to save a man's life.
It describes the exact mechanism of the protocol.
The objective here is healing. We need to talk about how this technology actually works, because it addresses your concern. Think about how memory functions neurologically.
Okay.
You have the hippocampus acting essentially as your brain's RAM. It holds on to the immediate present tense sensory data. Then, through consolidation, it writes that data to the cortex, which is your permanent hard drive.
Right. Standard neurology.
The hypnotic touch disc simply blocks that transfer. The RAM clears, the hard drive never receives the file. If the memory of the trauma actively harms the patient's long-term recovery, then preventing that consolidation is an act of profound care.
Profound care?
Yes! Kessler himself admits this. He writes with absolute clarity that he did not want to remember it. He didn't want to remember the moment of incision, the chemical smell of the theater, or the horrifying moment a surgeon's face changes if they find something unexpected.
Which is a natural fear.
He calls the offer of guaranteed absence from his own body very nearly the most attractive offer I had ever been made. He spent 3 weeks losing weight and sleep out of sheer terror. The protocol offered him mercy. Why do we insist that a patient must bear the psychological scars of their physical salvation?
It is not shielding the mind. It is creating a sacrificial entity to take the fall.
A sacrificial entity? It's his own mind.
And this touches on the most chilling realization Kessler has in that hospital bed. He realizes he is hiring a stranger to endure the trauma. He is authorizing a version of himself to be brought into existence on that operating table.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it implies there are two different people.
There is a conscious, feeling entity who will experience the terror, answer the surgeon's questions, feel the pressure of the retractors, and then be conceptually executed when the disc wipes the RAM, as you put it.
Conceptually executed is incredibly dramatic.
He says it perfectly.
That version of myself will be a real person. He will form for a few hours the experience of his own life. And then he is folded back into Kessler, taking none of his memories with him. That is existential horror.
You talk about mercy, but where is the horror if he wakes up fine?
Where is the mercy for the man on the table? He suffers, and his suffering is rendered completely meaningless because it is intentionally unaccounted for. We only have to look at Kessler's reference to the boy whose disc failed over Yemen.
Well, that was a technological malfunction.
But that boy retained the memories. The hours happened. The consciousness was real. The pain was real. To treat those conscious hours as a disposable utility just because the hard drive usually gets wiped is to fundamentally devalue human subjective experience.
I understand the emotional weight of that argument. Really, I do. But neurologically, it relies on a fragmented view of identity that just doesn't hold up.
How doesn't it hold up?
Identity is fundamentally tied to the continuity of memory. We are the stories we can tell ourselves about our past. When Kessler wakes up in the recovery ward, hoping to eat hospital soup and complain about it, he is the exact same integrated Andrew Kessler who walked into St. Mary's.
But with missing hours.
Right, but the intervening hours of pain functionally did not happen to him, the narrative self. We go to sleep every night and lose hours of conscious continuity.
But we don't feel pain while we sleep. We aren't having our internal organs resected while chatting with a surgeon.
True, the sensory input is different, but the outcome for the integrated self is identical. A gap in the timeline. The stranger you're talking about isn't a separate person. It's just Andrew Kessler's localized neurology processing stimuli without writing it to long-term storage.
Just his localized neurology?
Yes. You are philosophically anthropomorphizing a transient neurochemical state. By calling it existential horror, you are imposing a massive philosophical burden on what is essentially an advanced anesthetic technique.
It's not just the technique, it alters consciousness.
Kessler's goal is to survive a potentially fatal retroperitoneal tumor. The protocol allows his localized neurology to help the surgeon achieve that goal without burdening the long-term Andrew Kessler with the trauma. It's a pragmatic triumph.
A pragmatic triumph that leaves a man writing desperate letters on the back of hip replacement leaflets because he fears what he has just agreed to.
He's anxious about surgery, which is normal.
You cannot simply dismiss the transient neurochemical state as irrelevant. That state is a conscious human being. The pain is real. The leaflet says it is modulated, but it is absolutely present.
Even if it's not remembered?
Yes. When that localized neurology, as you call it, screams internally or feels the pressure of the surgical instruments, that is real suffering happening in the universe. And Kessler knows it. He knows he is outsourcing his agony to a ghost version of himself.
He's outsourcing it to a moment he won't recall.
He asks, I do not know if I am the man who is having the operation or if the man who is having the operation is a stranger I have hired. That is not just philosophical navel-gazing. That is a profound violation of his somatic integrity.
I think it's a necessary compromise.
You are asking a patient to fracture their consciousness to save their body. And the fact that we don't know what happens to those lost hours that they go wherever the boy's hour over Yemen went suggests a psychic toll we haven't even begun to measure. The cost of treating conscious experience as a disposable medical tool is that we lose our grip on what it means to be wholly human.
I hear you, but what is the alternative? Let's ground this again in the stakes of Bay 4.
The alternative is traditional anesthesia.
Right. General anesthesia, where the surgeon is flying blind, where a microscopic complication with his pancreas is missed, or where his aging heart simply cannot handle the depth of the sedation, and he never wakes up at all.
Which is a risk with any major surgery.
But a massively reduced risk here. His daughters lose their father. His wife loses her husband. Does his uninterrupted biographical timeline pay the mortgage? Does his retained somatic integrity comfort his widow?
No, obviously not.
Kessler himself concludes the letter by saying he agrees to the medical part. He wants the laparotomy. He wants the tumor out. He wants to walk into his kitchen on Friday afternoon. Medicine is not a philosophy seminar. It is a brutal battle against biology.
I don't disagree with the battle, just the weapon.
But the protocol is an incredibly effective weapon in that battle. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about consciousness, yes, but the ultimate aim of medicine is survival.
Survival at a steep cognitive cost.
Kessler's acceptance of this, doing whatever is necessary to return to his family, validates the protocol's primary utility. The delivery mechanism might feel chilling to us sitting here debating it from afar, but it kept a man alive.
It kept a biological organism alive, perhaps. But Kessler's scribbled notes stand as a vital warning to all of us. While the surgery may save his physical form, the cost of treating conscious experience as a disposable byproduct is profound.
Even if it saves him.
Survival should not require a patient to unknowingly sacrifice a piece of their very existence. The fact that he folds this letter into a leaflet, hoping someone finds it if the memory disk fails, shows a man deeply unsettled by his own complicity in his erasure.
Because it's new and frightening?
He tells us that while he may get his life back, he will not get his morning back. He suspects an increasing number of us will be forced into this same bargain, and he explicitly states, "I am not sure any of us has yet sat down and worked out what it costs."
That is a fair point.
We must find a way to separate the medical intervention from the deletion of the self, or we risk engineering a healthcare system that views human consciousness as an obstacle to be bypassed, rather than the very essence of what we are trying to save.
I think, that is precisely where this debate finds its convergence. Technology, particularly medical technology, is advancing at a pace that far outstrips our frameworks for understanding it.
Absolutely. We have engineered a physiological way to survive the unsurvivable, but we haven't yet engineered the vocabulary to understand what we leave behind on the operating table. Kessler's final uncertainty about which version of himself will emerge is a question that will increasingly define the future of medicine.
Exactly. We really have to ask ourselves what pieces of our humanity we are willing to trade for an extra margin of safety.
So, as we close today's discussion, we leave you to ponder Andrew Kessler's choice. If you were handed that glowing tablet at 5 in the morning, facing the absolute fragility of your own biology, would you trade a piece of your own biography for a safer medical outcome? When the lights don't go out, but the memories do, which version of you is really waking up in the recovery ward?
It is a question that lingers long after the effects of the disc wears off. Thank you for joining us on the debate. We encourage you to continue exploring these complex intersections of medical science and personal identity.
Until next time.
That's a wrap on today's chapter. We hope you enjoyed settling in with us over your lunch break. New chapters drop twice a week right here on the New Atlantis Inc., so make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so you never miss what happens next. This story is also available on Amazon in hardback, paperback, and Kindle editions. Thanks for being here. We'll see you at our next lunchtime listening, and keep on reading.